Welcome to the continued podcast adventures of Superhero Speak.
But I think many of the people that love this character and that love superheroes in general have used these stories as inspiration to say, you know what, I'm going to do something good in the world. I'm going to make a difference like my hero when I was a kid.
That is my fondest memory of it, because when you're doing comic books, you want them to affect people.
Right.
You want people to care. You want to strike emotions. And I knew that Clone Saga was striking a lot of emotions.
Can you imagine Pulp Fiction starring Goofy and Mickey Mouse?
I can totally imagine that.
I'm sure somebody's written that one
quarter
too.
pounder with cheese and France, Mickey. What? Boy, ale with cheese, Mickey. Yeah, I can totally.
See?
I would watch the hell out of that movie.
Yes, I gladly sacrifice that my progeny to you, almighty Marvel beast.
But Neil Adams is somewhere going, it's my time.
How do you measure success? Hey everyone, and welcome to Superhero Speak. I'm your host, Dave.
And John.
You measure success by the length of that intro. Jeez, that thing is long. JD, by the way.
Yes, but you know, it's clips from some of my favorite episodes over the years. I need to redo it at some point, because I think we might get a new favorite clip tonight because we have a guest, guys. So we have to behave ourselves.
Be our guest. Be our guest. Be our guest.
Making his 7th return to this podcast, the one and only Troy Brownfield. How are you doing, sir?
Great, thanks, guys. Yeah, like I said earlier, I appreciate being asked anytime. And until I saw the post earlier, I honestly did not recall it being 7. That's kind of crazy. That's does that cement returning champion status? I don't know how many.
Sure.
Is there a 7 club? Is there a jacket?
Yes. It's in the mail. Don't worry, it'll get to you eventually.
Last time was August 7th, 2018.
Wow, it's been a while.
Yes.
Yeah.
It has been a while.
Anything happened since then?
Well, you can answer for all of the predictions you made for the DCU back then.
Oh man, I have to think about that.
You thought we were keeping Wonder Woman and Aquaman, I think, but apparently we're throwing the whole kit and caboodle out. So,
Well, I think the biggest change is that we're now live on Sundays streaming.
yeah.
It's all JD's fault.
And we're doing well, if I do say so myself. Do you see these numbers that we're getting for our replays? I emailed Dave this week. I'm like, dude, this is unbelievable. We're doing very well. Kudos to you, sir. And I'm done with that for the night.
For the night? No, you're not.
Okay.
Someone's got to toot our horn. Yeah. So how are you guys doing? How are you, John? You were telling me something. You were telling me something before we got on air. I don't know if you want to repeat it or not.
What'd I miss?
Well, seeing as how we don't have any like low bar anymore, apparently. No, I went to my sister and her husband went on vacation, so I went up to Connecticut to watch my nephews for a week. And about 2.5 to 3 of those days, I had food poisoning, which was just lovely. So I spent almost a half a day comatose, and the rest of the time not really knowing what was going on, and other things that come with food poisoning, which is just not So my voice is a little little off, and but otherwise I made it through. I got it home, obviously, as you can see, and yeah, that's about it. There's not much more that I can say about this.
It's very John O'Grady to have a vacation and be absolutely miserable.
Yes. Very much.
I did get to play D&D with my nephews and a really good friend of mine, a guy named Dave, who I've known since high school, and his son. And we knocked some heads. I DM'd a game with 5th edition, and it went pretty well. So at least I got to do that. We watched a few movies. I applied my nephews with Galaxy Quest and Shin Godzilla. So
Nice.
a couple of good ones there.
All right, let's not get on a Dungeons and Dragons rant this episode.
played some D&D, followed it up with a nice little BM, and then it was all good to go.
How about you, JD? How are
And
your
there we go.
DMs?
No strange BMs over here. So this morning I had to stream the graduation ceremony, which I completely forgot that I had to do until 10 o'clock at night last night. So I'm like, oh yeah, how the hell do I do this again? So I was trying to figure out how to do a live stream with the camera, and I realized I'm missing half my equipment. And it was 10 o'clock at night and I couldn't go buy anything. So I had to get up at 6 and run to Walmart and kind of cobble together what was necessary. Long story short, I got it done just barely. Just barely. But it worked.
Dave
So
and
that
I
was
know
it.
what that feels like.
Oh, yes. That's it. Nothing cool.
That's it.
Nothing cool this week. Very,
Wow.
very slow. Finals. We have finals this week. I'm excited.
No.
Uh-oh.
I haven't had like a real summer in forever. Kassan, D&D. Let's discuss the new playtests. No,
Oh,
I don't know what that means. Someone want to translate that for me?
Yeah, translation. Let's not open that can of worms right now.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I think Kassan, I think we need like a small extra podcast per week with Kassan, just throwing out stuff.
I think yeah.
That's not a bad idea, actually.
We're gonna have to get him on the
We will have to get
on the
him
show eventually.
Yeah.
All right.
Good.
so-
How was your weekend? We skipped you.
You skipped me. Wow.
We did. We went from me. We did John's miserable vacation. How were you?
I'm doing well. Kinda. I'm pretending for the cameras right now.
What's wrong?
Just had a horrible weekend.
Oh.
Well, don't want to get into anything right now. I'm sure she's watching, and
Enough said.
yeah,
Oh.
Are just such a downer this time around.
I know.
Welcome, Troy.
Yes,
Thanks.
It's like,
guys.
Hopefully you had a better week.
bring us the sunshine, man.
Oh, well, let's see. And this might blow your minds a little bit if you have context for stuff I said in the past. But my oldest son's getting ready to graduate high school this week. So that's probably crazy to you guys. The first time I was on, they were small. And so they're 18 and 16.
Yeah.
And so Connor is getting ready to graduate. And, so we're deep in the that kind of cycle of events where you have lots of awards and whatnot. And he's in journalism and speech and debate, and Kyle's in TV for the school. And so they all had banquets and awards. And there's like a senior honors. So it was just like, it's been this big whole, thing. And then we're having a party for Connor here, which, is normal, but we're also doing a lot of work to get ready for it, as you would expect when you have lots and lots of people coming to the house. So it's one of those things where it's like a lot of stuff. So, it's a very, very busy time. And you might, maybe you do, maybe you don't remember. I've done cards for Tops off and on for a long time, freelance. And of course, there's stuff this week, where it's like, hey, you think you can squeeze into like, yeah, sure, why not? Let's just go completely mental. But no, it's I'm not going to complain about any of it. This is a great time for Connor. He's pretty happy. He's going to Indiana State. He got a nice big scholarship, so it's very cool. So
Sycamores.
Excellent.
That's right. That's my wife and I went there, and we did not exercise a particular influence on him for that. But he was leaning toward it, and then when the other happened, it kind of helped. As it would, anytime you get offered a big deal, then it is, persuasive. But
Right.
They've got the stuff he's interested in, and he's going to be, and I say this because it's relevant and vaguely hilarious. He'll be a English / creative writing major with journalism minor, which means that my friend Justin Peniston is right. I failed to warn him all of this time. I have enabled and encouraged, and my fault, guys. But he'll be great. He's, I said it a lot. He was when he was 13 and doing stuff for the school paper, and then as he got older, I said, he's better at that age than I was at that age. And then as he got to, hey, Paolo, oh boy, as he got to his late teens and everything, he's really done a tremendous job with his writing, his school journalism, and so forth. So
it's got to be so cool as a dad to watch that and to see your kid live those things out. Like mine's just 7, so he's just starting to really blossom into a human. So I mean, it must be really cool on that end.
Yeah, you got plenty of time to ruin him.
That's how I feel sometimes. No, I understand.
And I'll say, give Kyle some equal time. He's very into film, and with the TV station, he did a couple of short films for the student TV. He's very into horror movies. He bought a green screen setup a few months ago. He's been doing some movie reviews on Instagram and whatnot. He's very, and he's got great taste in movies, not just horror movies in particular. He's very classic, foreign, what have you. He's very inclined to seek out all kinds of stuff. He loves 12 Angry Men, got into Lynch, so he's his tastes are expansive, which is great. So he'll make interesting things. so I dig it. It is, but like you said, man, it's very, very cool when you're, there's all kinds of stuff that they do that's just like, wow, I can't imagine.
Yeah, my kids didn't want to follow in my footsteps. I don't know. All right, so we're gonna move on to JD's favorite topics: social media madness. It's a little different this time. We have a couple comments, but then Kassan threw a lot of stuff at us this week.
He always does. He's like keeping us on our toes, which I appreciate.
It's good.
So and it's always interesting to get a guest's perspective on things. So of course, not long ago we talked about the rumors that Adam Driver. Well, it's confirmed that he signed on to do a Marvel movie, The Fantastic Four. We don't know who he's playing yet. The rumors are saying Reed Richards, and so we said we'd rather see him as Doom. And first off, Randy from Cult 45 said, honestly, anyone could be cast for Reed and also play Doom. That SNL episode of Adam Driver is very funny and just goes to show how committed he is as an actor. Yeah, I mean, I have nothing against him as an actor. I don't see him as Reed Richards. What do you think, Troy? I'm kind of curious.
Well, it's interesting that you guys feel that way, because I do think he'd be a great Doom, and I think one of the things that he would be great with is the fact that he has worked behind a mask, and I think he's done enough that he doesn't get stereotyped by it. Because some people, they might be afraid to be the person behind a mask too much, but when you look at his career, he's done Marriage Story, he's done Jim Jarmusch movies, he's done a lot of things that show his range, and SNL, of course, the Abraham H. Parnassus, the Career Day is a classic. It's just a stone cold classic that's got a big life beyond even the show. So like his commitment level, even in small bits, is enormous. So I think that as Doom, he would be great. As Reed, he could do it because he's that good, but he wouldn't be like my first choice. I'd be really interested to see what he did. I bet he would lean more toward the disconnected, awkward kind of Reed that we see in recent years, where Sue's trying to have a conversation with him, and he's like blowing up the negative zone and not paying attention.
Right.
I could see the spin of Adam Driver in that, but I really, like you guys, I would prefer Doom if he was going to be,
We've already had the disconnected Reed and Fan Forstick, so
yeah.
He has the personality. I think he's got the personality for Reed, except for the fact that there just needs to be some underlying charisma somewhere, And I mean, Adam Driver could probably do it, but he's more menacing. He can do
I think
medicine really well.
I don't think there's a lack of charisma of Adam Driver. I don't think that's an issue.
I mean, yeah, I know, but like, I don't know, just some, just a feeling. But then again, he's so versatile. Maybe you just pull it off, and
He could. I've never seen him as Doom, but I think he could.
I also kind of feel like a lot of people are just judging him solely as Kylo Ren.
Yeah,
and I feel like that's just one aspect. Like he's been in a lot of stuff, and Kylo Ren is meant to be angsty. Like the character was meant to be angsty, and that's why he's so good in it. But
well, did you see Marriage Story? That's the most angsty movie ever made.
Yeah, that was pretty angsty too. But I didn't get to see 65, and he was.
Me neither. I heard it was good. I heard it was pretty fun. I want to see that one.
What?
I'll do this. Randy says oil is the earth's milk, and only the strong can suckle at its teat. What the fuck does that mean?
Is that from the SNL?
Yeah, it's the SNL.
Oh, okay. I forgot about that.
Oil is my business, children.
I forgot about that one.
Point to the weakest among you, and I will break his spirit.
All right.
The boys and I like reference that all the time, so it's.
All right, moving on. Of course, Kassan made us aware of this, and I'm sure he did it because you're such a Stephen King fan. There, JD.
Guilty.
He forwarded this tweet to us. Stephen King said, "I got an advanced screening of The Flash today. As a rule, I don't like superhero movies, but this one is special. It's a heartfelt, funny, and eye-popping. I loved it." Of course,
is it set in Maine? Is that why he's doing it?
Write what you know, right? Isn't that? Come on, we got two writers down here below. They can attest to that.
Man knows Maine. I'll give him that.
Yes.
That's high praise.
So
Stephen King.
Super high praise.
Obviously, we've been going back and forth on this a lot because it's like the DC movies haven't been great, and then all the trouble with Ezra Miller, and it was like, do we want to go see this film? Then the previews come out, or not the previews come out. We were like, oh, this looks really good. So, kind of, where do you stand on it, Troy, at this point?
Yeah, I too have felt that similar, pull of the man. Miller has really buried Miller with a lot of things that have gone on. So it made me way less excited. And I kind of feel like I don't have a lot of urgency necessarily to see it, like, tempered with knowing that I'll eventually see it. It's one of those things in the middle. King, I find the King bit interesting because King in particular, I mean, I love King, but I think he's a fantastic recommender of books for sure. And I've never felt steered wrong by films he talks about too much either. And, if you read, Danse Macabre or On Writing and various, he gives laundry lists of recommendations. And he did a Bustle interview several years ago where he recommended like 11 horror novels at the time that were great. And that's how I found Paul Tremblay. That was A Head Full of Ghosts was what he recommended. Like that was his. He had done a couple of novels before that, but Head Full of Ghosts was kind of the breakthrough for me. And then, he did Cabin a couple novels later, which obviously just got the big budget treatment. But, it's King's a great recommender. He's pretty thoughtful in his reviews. If you remember the Pop of King column he had in Entertainment Weekly, he'd really break stuff down. He talked about the Hunger Games series when it first started. In novels, he's a big consumer of books and film, and like I said, he's thoughtful. He kicks it around. He has visceral reactions like all of us do, but if he's going to put the time into saying this is a special thing, then something must have really connected with him outside of Maine. But
I was going to say that, like, he has downed a lot of superhero movies, and I can understand, like, he doesn't like the genre. So
it's not his thing. Yeah,
it's not his thing, and I can respect that. So for him to come out and say, like, this is heartfelt and it's good, it's like, oh, okay. So I mean, unfortunately, we have a podcast and we've got to go see it to talk about it. But
right,
his movie's got to be good for people to put up with the sociopath as much as they have, right? It's all I can keep coming up with, man. And like you said, King is a great recommender of things. Like I go back to the Evil Dead, and they put that first Evil Dead one sheet on. What's right on there? Stephen King recommendation, and that really helped the buzz get out about the original Evil Dead movie. Was the fact that the most popular American writer at the time said, "This is great, go see it."
Yeah. So
Raimi still talks about that as the original seal of approval for that.
All right. So moving on, I asked our audience a question, and the thing I love about social media is everyone liked it because there's a picture and no one commented. Except for one person. All right. So the question I put out here, let me bring it up. Of course, in a couple weeks we've got Into the Spider-Verse coming out, or Across the Spider-Verse, and Adam Spielberg is the voice of Ben Reilly's Scarlet Spider. But my question is, since he's a clone of Peter Parker, shouldn't Jake Johnson voice him as well?
It's from a different universe, sir.
And
are you sure? Do we know?
The
from a
answer
different
to
universe,
everything.
Do we know this? The only person to comment
No,
was
that's
Randy.
it's my default answer. That's from a different universe. So
Okay, hold on. Randy,
It's the default answer to everything.
Randy said, "Yeah, but friends and paychecks is one, and two, you're going to want someone who can go serious and funny. Sandberg can do that." I don't like Adam Sandberg. That's part of the reason I asked the question to the audience. Yeah. So that's your belief is Ben Reilly's going to be a different universe. It's not going to be Ben Reilly
they're all
from our
different
universe.
universes. So.
They are all from different universes. There's no reason to bring in a guy from the same universe. But okay, this seems to be because we got Mayday, right? We got Mayday running around in this movie. This seems to be more inspired by the Spider-Girl version of Peter Parker, right? And that one, Ben Reilly is dead. Does that make a whole lot of sense? No, but I'm going to go with it because it proves my point. Andy Sandberg. Thank you, Joey.
Oh, did I say Adam?
You did.
I'm sorry.
I spent 5 minutes trying to figure out who Adam Sandberg was.
So I don't know. What do you think, John? See, I'm looking at it from the Clone Wars standpoint, where they got one guy to voice all these clones.
Yeah, but if he was from the same universe, that storyline would have happened, but we don't know that storyline happened. So it's, I mean, the answer to everything is basically, hey, multiverse,
But then that's the conceit of this movie. It's a multiverse story.
Right. Yeah.
It feels cheap.
Boy, are you going to be disappointed.
Hey, I was disappointed in the first one, remember?
That's true.
How?
Some people have no soul.
I am not a fan.
Gwen Stacy was there, so you immediately checked out.
Yeah. That's, truth.
Dave saw Gwen Stacy and was like, "This is crap!"
Yep.
Not Gwen Stacy, Spider-Gwen.
Wrecked my headphones.
It doesn't matter. You see Gwen Stacy in any form, and that
you
movie
check out.
just so happens to get a bad review from you for some reason.
All right. Let's move on. This is something I'm sure is close to everyone. In the bottom half of the screen, we of course have been talking a lot about the writer's strike, and another article brought to us by Kassan. Apparently, SAG has authorized the actors to go on strike. I guess this is in support of the writers. So everything Marvel obviously is going to be on the back burner for a while.
Wow.
So Troy, what do you think about this? Is this a good move?
Well, I mean, the proximity is just based on the expiration dates of the deals. Essentially, I mean, it's so that's depending on how you feel about it. I mean, that is unfortunate timing. I support what the writers are doing because there is a tremendous amount at stake in terms of how the future technology plays out. payments and so forth. And part of the problem, they had a strike and agreement, and they've had some other updates to agreements, but no one reckoned on how streaming was going to play out the way that it did. And I think that people are maybe looking for a little bit of security and so forth, and it's not just a money grab. I think there's a lot of people who don't understand, that in a lot of ways writers are always last. And to get compensated, get residuals and everything. And so it's very important. And with the actors, I think that some of the similar issues are at play because, you have, Tom Hanks making a statement the other day that's kind of weird, but, that he doesn't mind if he's acting after he's dead. If they have, his images and so forth, that they could reconstruct him and keep him going.
Well, that's the thing. They're being the actors are being
some actors like James Earl Jones have made deals to allow their voices to be used in perpetuity, so that Darth Vader can always be James Earl Jones, and he made that deal, which is kind of interesting. There's a whole vocal sampling software wrapped up in it where he's committed lots of lines in addition to dialogue he's already done, so they'll be able to generate James Earl Jones as Vader for forever. And he made that agreement, and I endorse it if that's what he wants to do. But there's a lot of actors who are very nervous about, not just how the structure of deals works, approvals and all that, but the structure of how their image and voice will be used in perpetuity. What kind of rights go to their families in those cases. Those are real issues, and there's all kinds of stuff right now in terms of season lengths and everything's changing so much. And there's no guarantees and how many people can be in a room. There's just so much to it that the maddening thing is that a lot of what they're asking for right now is kind of a big roll of about $480 million if they were to address everything, and that's still like $100 million less than Zaslav makes at Warner. So,
wow.
It stings. It stings when you see that kind of thing, and very few people are benefit at the top end. Like there's a whole lot of people that will benefit by not making a whole lot of extra, that they're just going to benefit by the protections and guarantees that they'll have going forward.
Right.
And all of them are being accosted from every direction. Voice actors, that the contracts for voice actors are like now just including when you sign this contract, you also sign away your voice to AI. Yeah. I'm sure the actors are having the same thing with their images. Like when you sign this, we are allowed to use you, or when we do AI generated stuff. And it's just like, it makes sense that SAG-AFTRA would follow up with the Writers Guild, because let's face it, this is late stage capitalism, that the studios are overstepping their bounds, and of all of the different parts of our society that are getting attacked, the writers and actors are the ones with some of the strongest skills, and so they're going to have to lead the way in showing us how to protect ourselves from these corporations that just want to do whatever the hell they want with us. So.
It's like funny. Like there's a website now, 11 Labs. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but like you can upload 2 minutes of audio of anyone's voice, and it'll create a synthesis. It'll synthesize it, and you can make it say whatever you want. There's actually clips of Joe Rogan going around saying stuff that he's never said because. Mm-hmm. Like he's got an interview with what's his face from Apple, founder of Apple. Jobs. It's just him. But obviously he's never interviewed him in real life. But this has been floating around the internet because someone created it with 11 Labs, and it's like
I uploaded your voice and it still wouldn't say anything nice about me though. I don't understand.
Yeah, well, it's programming can only do so much.
Ghost in the shell,
No, it's like Troy was saying. Like the world is different, right? Things have changed so much in media rights just in the last decade, right? Yeah. That it needs to be addressed, right? Because they're not playing the board game has shifted and it's so slanted in favor because CEOs really kind of changed the game midstream. So at this point, things need to be reevaluated from the top down.
Yeah, I'm struck by, and it just goes to show how smart she was. Carrie Fisher made a joke at the AFI tribute to George Lucas many years ago. At this point, maybe pushing 20 years, where when she gave her remarks and said, that she also wanted to thank George for locking up her likeness rights so hard that every time she looks in the mirror, she owes him $5. And it was an offhanded joke, but she hit upon,
here we are.
Yeah, it's like this is
ever since
it was prescient.
I believe ever since what was it? Batman. Jack Nicholson said he will take his money on the back end with the toy rights, and he ended up making more than anyone involved with that film. Like, I believe that's now part of the standard contract is like you're signing away your likeness so they can license toys out so they get the money. Not
right.
The big one was Travolta with the soundtrack rights. When his agent told him for Saturday Night Fever, given the level of people that were, because the Bee Gees were just making an album.
Yep.
They didn't know they were making the disco, anthem.
The disco album.
Yeah. So his agent told him, take a little less, take part of the soundtrack, not knowing it's going to be one of the biggest sellers of all time. But Travolta does that for his next 3 movies, which turn out to be Saturday Night Fever, Grease, and Urban Cowboy.
Jesus.
And that's why the dude just sat around, didn't make movies for a couple of years and bought jets because he didn't have to.
Right.
But just that whole thing of like Dave was saying, who owns what and who gets to participate in the percentage, and it made everything shift in such a dramatic way that I think that some of the studios started to get afraid of what they were giving away, and they don't give anything away.
Yeah,
Downey took a percentage too, as opposed to a paycheck on Age of Ultron, and used it to raise the salaries of the other big 6.
Yeah,
which I'm pretty sure nobody expected either.
Yeah.
All right. And there's 2 more things, but I'm just going to do the next one because the last one's a long rant from Kassan about Superman, and we can we can talk about that later.
That was our whole show last week.
Yeah, he did ask a good question, and I'm kind of curious. And since Troy, I'm sure you've seen this movie. I hope you might have an opinion. So we reviewed Guardians of the Galaxy a couple weeks ago on the show, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And his question to us was, do we still feel the same about the movie a week removed from seeing it?
I think so. I haven't thought about it a lot since, but the conversations I've had in reference to it, I still feel pretty good about it. I liked it a lot. I don't have the time to see movies like I used to when I go to see it multiple times at the theater.
Yeah.
I just don't have that kind of time anymore. But like what's stuck with me seems to resonate still, and I still liked it quite a bit.
How about you, John?
I think its heart got me.
Yeah.
Like it's still got, like, there are little things that bug me a little bit more now, like, why didn't he have his auto mask and his jet boots at the end? But again, like, it just, James Gunn, man, like, you just can't beat him. Like it just had it all heart. So I still love it.
What did you think, Troy? What did you like the movie? I guess.
Oh yeah, absolutely. All 4 of us went. Wife, boys, everybody really enjoyed it. I was delighted in, first of all, that he played against expectations so hard, because I think everybody went in with their list of, these are the people who are going to die.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, look at the scenes that they released.
He made a emotional, cathartic movie that didn't rely on killing a single one of the heroes off.
Isn't that great?
That's a trick, man. He did a fantastic job of that. And with the emotional stuff just really resonated well. But also, I'm going to say cathartic again. Man, the whole team beatdown of the High Evolutionary has got to be one of the most cathartic action scenes in the MCU, because first of all, the guy deserved to have 100% of his ass kicked, but it wasn't just Groot showing up for Rocket. It was everybody down the line getting their shot in, like a real superhero final fight against a more powerful adversary, and it was great. It played great. And that scene lasts from the time that he says he's Rocket Raccoon to the end of that scene is about 1 minute and 9 seconds. So, but that it goes by so fast, but it's like this tent pole in the movie, this high point of emotion. And you guys said it, like Gunn does that stuff like very few other people. I'm still, of all the DC projects, I'm still amazed by Peacemaker. I'm still amazed how well Peacemaker worked in every aspect. It was funny, it was heartfelt, and just so weird. But with Guardians, it felt like an ending without the cliches of an ending.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm just going to say that not only did no one die, not the High Evolutionary didn't even die. A lot of people assumed he died because the ship blew up at the end, but no, it's been confirmed that's who Drax is carrying out at the end of the movie. Like when they're all going to nowhere, he's carrying the High Evolutionary. So, yeah.
Hey, no one died, but they did have Rocket almost die for almost the entire thing. So,
well, lots of people died. There's a whole planet that died.
Well, yeah, that too.
Yeah,
but the worst thing was small furry animals got hurt.
Kassan's asking about the reveal. That's Gunn revealed that is who Drax is carrying. So,
yeah, I didn't know that. That was interesting to learn.
Yep. All right. Well, that is going to do it for Social Media Madness for this week. So if you watching right now want to know how can you be part of Social Media Madness, here's our good friend Don to tell you more.
How's the show going? You enjoying it? Do you want to be part of Social Media Madness? And go ahead and head over to superheroespeak.com, where you can find all the social links, episodes of the show. You can find comic reviews by Chris and other articles. We're posting stuff on there all the time. And while you're there, check out the rest of the Geek World All-Stars Podcast Network. Great shows like the Pop Prison Power Podcast, Colt 45, Fans on Patrol, the Gorilla Brain Podcast, So Wizard, and Superhero Speak. Hashtag GW All-Stars, and you will not be disappointed. So make sure that you are engaging with the Superhero Speak Twitter post whenever they come up. Give us your best comment, and you may make JD say this.
I get so tired of these dumb motherfuckers.
All right, it's back to the show.
Greatest audio drop ever. Hey, I just had an idea while Don was reading that thing that I've heard him read 12 times now. We should actually put the podcast, we should actually put the social media posts on the show, like put it in the stream so people can see them.
All right, I'll start that for next week.
Yeah. Show notes during the show.
Don't forget to check out the Omega Level Nerds podcast, available on YouTube and wherever podcasts are available. And this is usually when we give our guests the opportunity to tell people where they can find you on social media.
Well, you can find me on Facebook and Twitter and other places if you poke around, at Troy Brownfield on Twitter, and then just Troy Brownfield on Facebook. I'm sure there are others. But, that's where I would be most easily findable. Instagram as well. So,
all right, cool. Well, on that note, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and then we're going to come back, and it's all going to be about Troy.
Yay.
Some podcasts are like this.
On top, missionary, pull the leg over, so that way it's like they're on their side a bit. So that way it's like you're hitting it from the back, but you're still getting face action.
Yeah.
That way you still reach your hand
some
up
twister
there.
shit. Yeah.
But you still get deep
And
because you get and
face
face
and neck.
It's a power position.
What would you call that? Like a wine opener?
The bop it, you can smack it, you can choke it, you can pull it, you can do everything.
And some podcasts are like this.
It's hard. I'm one day off vaping right now, bro. And I want to fucking smoke a bowl out of my own nuts, bro, of pure nicotine.
But only one podcast is where you can get in-depth analysis like this.
Ooh, we let that slide. That was woo.
He's a
Sweet
bad
and
guy.
sour
It's
chicken
fine.
ass nigga.
He's a bad guy.
Ooh,
Let's just walk over this one.
because he was a villain. We let that slide. That was. Oof.
He's a
I forgot about
villain.
that. My bad. Just because you naming food, nigga, don't make it better, dog. Like it's still racist as shit,
There's so much racism.
bro. Also, I know ain't no black people wrote this, so I know this is just.
This is just them.
Dripping in
we can say
racism.
whatever he wanted through his mouth. Come on, think of all the racist things you want to say to those Asian people.
Get it off your
Say it.
chest. It'll be spoken in jive, so it wouldn't hurt so much.
His sweet jive mouth.
You are now listening to Cult 45.
This is Beat 'em Down.
And I'm Random Randy Savage.
Find us on all your podcatching apps like Podbean or Spotify, and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, or just go to www.cult45podcast.com.
Also, check out our YouTube for that sweet, sweet video content.
Cult 45, the only podcast that puts hair on your chest.
One day we're gonna get Randy back on the show and ask him where the hell he got those clips.
Look what Randy just said.
Guess who's getting a bunch of pictures for next social media? Man. See, I knew it. I knew Randy would be into that. Seriously, there's a story. I don't want you to write it out. I want to hear it from you, Randy. How you guys found these ridiculous shows that you subjected us to watching. For mere
I'm curious if
just
the
spin the
bottle
wheel.
in the ad is about like an actual bottle that he put a label on, or is that like CGI? Because it looks really good. So,
some After Effects stuff does look good.
and anyway, as always, other podcasts who are watching this, if you'd like us to advertise your podcast, send us your ad over to Dave at Superhero Speak, and I'll make sure it's on next episode. What?
I just had an idea. Continue.
All right. So, Troy, how are you, sir? So it's been a while. Of course, obviously, you're advertising.
Yeah.
You still are writing for Saturday Evening Post. That's I think you announced that on this show at one point.
Might have been, yeah. I started. That's a good place to start. I joined the Post in June of 2018, and I was a staff writer initially. I became the senior editor and editor of the kids magazines as well in 21, and then executive editor earlier this year of the Post and the kids mag. So it did coincide with a noticeable drop in comics.
Yeah.
for a long period of time. I was still doing Spark Shooter into the pandemic age until I had a pause on that. That'll return eventually. Spark Shooter. I've got 2 chapters left of the original story, and believe me, that's been discussed. But over time, and Paulo chimed in with a comment a little while ago. That's the great Brazilian artist, Paulo Yonami, who Paulo and I first worked together at Dynamite on Blood Queen, and he was one of the cover artists. And we started doing stuff together. I wrote some of his Midnight Witch comics in Brazil. So that relationship has continued on projects over time, which kind of brings us to the new thing, which Paulo and a bunch of other artists in his studios have been doing covers and so forth for Tidal Wave. And I wrote the crossover between his Midnight Witch character and the 10th Muse a while back. And so just over time, I got the chance to I'll be doing the new Legends of Isis miniseries. which is I provided some art for you guys. Paolo did the cover, and you can see the interior of the first page with sans lettering from Igor Sicarini, who is another Brazilian artist. But these guys are tremendous. Love working with Paolo and all the artists in his studio. They they love comics. They have a great graphic sense. All of them. Paolo's been doing some really terrific tribute covers on the team up books for Tidal Wave. They're all homages to the classic 70s Brave and the Bold run, but featuring the different Tidal Wave characters as they team up. There's a lot of love for that era. But ISIS was originally, when Tidal Wave was at Image many years ago, 10th Muse and Legend of Isis, and some of these characters were originally out as Image books. And then there were a couple of transformative things that the studio went through, and then Darren Davis relaunched all of the characters under the Tidal Wave banner, and so they've been putting out a lot of stuff over a period of time. A lot of the books, a series of minis and so forth, omnibus collecting original material. And I just had the opportunity to do this new ISIS mini, and it's a lot of fun. It's going to be called The New Kingdom, is the title, which is a reference to Egyptian history. If you're not familiar with the character, this is a spin on ancient Isis, the Egyptian deity, being moved to modern time and dealing with the machinations of Set, as well as supervillains and whatnot. And I'm doing a little bit more of a science fiction spin on that. And the art so far is really, really incredible.
Yes. And I was going to say that the thumbnail, the art is in the thumbnail for the episode.
Responds with. And, sometimes, I've been known to, hey, here's an idea, go nuts. And see what they come back with.
You froze up for a second there.
Satellite delay.
Yeah.
Oh, that's all right. What was the last thing you heard?
You just said that the art was really good, and I was going to say it is in the thumbnail for the episode, and I'll actually probably put the art down in the description of the episode.
Oh yeah, I was just saying that. So one of the best things about comics as a writer is just seeing what people come back with.
Yes.
And occasionally there are times in a script when I'll like maybe it's a fight scene or something, and I'll say go nuts, and see what or I'll give a very small description of something, and Igor has come back with some amazingly detailed stuff, which is bad for me because it only makes me go, okay, he does that on 2 lines, what will he do with 14? I don't want to drive the poor guy crazy, but I'm also I try to be considerate of the artists as well, because when I did the Blood Queen versus Dracula mini at Dynamite, I know a lot of artists are not wild about drawing horses. But so when Kuber Ball got assigned to the book, I said, okay, man, first thing I got to tell you, I got horses. Are you okay?
Right.
He's like, yeah. He's like, okay. It's like, so the horses, the first issue, so the second issue, but rest of it, no more horses. He's like, okay, great. But it was, but yeah, I love seeing the pages come back, and what Igor does is pretty amazing. And the color work is fantastic on this too. Now, also with the current Tidal Wave stuff, everything they're doing is offered on Amazon. They're doing digital and then print later, and then also Comic Flea Market, which is comic book printing. The company Comic Book Printing, which handles printing for lots of indies, they have a storefront, and you get it there. They've eschewed previews over a long period of time because, without getting into it, and I'm not speaking for Darren or anything, but there's a lot of indies that have felt punished by a lot of the previews policies, particularly the sales thresholds and whatnot. And some companies are allowed to exist below a certain sales threshold in shops, and others aren't. And so, it's one of those things that the alternative ways of distribution are something that allows some of these indies to thrive. yeah, sure, you'd love to have everything in the shops, and Comic Flea Market makes it so that stores can order to have the books in stores if they're interested, just like Ingram. Ingram distribution as an alternative to previews. So if you're in a comic shop and you want to have some of these books, by all means, check out that comic book printing, comic book flea market, and see what the legs, man. They hate horses because of the legs.
The legs? I was
they're
just,
just
I was going to say, because
a
I
lot
was
of
asking.
work.
Yeah.
Horses anatomically are just a tough thing to draw. A lot of artists hate cars too.
Really?
Yeah, that's what I've found over time. I haven't experienced too much. I've said this before, but I've been insanely lucky with the vast majority of the artists that I've worked with. There's only really a couple where I would, kind of shy away from maybe doing other stuff. But most of the artists are just really fantastic to work with, and I think a lot of them, given the chance to show that they can do a thing, will do a thing because they know that it benefits them. It benefits them to be versatile and to take chances and show out a little bit.
So you had said that you weren't doing Spark Shooter. You've gotten away from comics for a little while. So how did this project come up? Like, did they just reach out and say, "Hey, we want you to write this"? Or
it was Paolo, and when Paolo had been doing covers and whatnot for Tidal Wave, and then the conversation between he and Darren became, did Paolo want to reprint some of the Brazilian Midnight Witch stuff in English for, through Tidal Wave? And one of the things that they wanted to do ahead of that was introduce the Midnight Witch to Tidal Wave's audience by having a crossover with the 10th Muse, who was their big character. And Paolo said, "Why don't we have Troy write the book?"
Okay.
And I was down. And
yep.
I had some familiarity with the Muse from when she came out. Like I said, that was an Image book at the time. It did very well. And so I went back and read up, and I wrote the story, the story for that crossover. It's a standalone book that's available on Amazon as well. Tidal Wave presents 10th Muse and Midnight Witch. I wanted to do something that, Paolo and I talked about a couple of different ways they could team up. And so basically we merged that Greek mythology aspect of the 10th Muse. And it has the witch and the Muse meeting up in Hades because they're both trying to retrieve the soul of a wrongfully dead person. They don't realize they're there for the same person. And so it works its way through, Hades kind of sets them some tasks to see if they can. So it was playing with different ideas. I was a little inspired. This is a deep cut. The anime film, The Winds of Change, from late 70s, early 80s, was kind of the thing that made me think of the trip through the underworld. And, so everybody liked what came together in the story and the art there. And it was after that Darren and I talked about some other stuff and, asked if I had any thoughts, on ISIS. And my first thought was this, like I said, science fiction heavy story that kind of leans on some of that Egyptian iconography and gives ISIS some extraterrestrial enemies, because there have been a lot of mythological enemies, as you would expect. That's something that happens, like you have a Hercules or a Thor or whatnot, where you run through a lot of the touchstones of it. And I'm not going to lie, I went Stargate. I thought, you think about, you have some of those things. And so I wanted to kind of homage it without, directly ripping it off. So I had to make it also personal to ISIS. And this first issue kind of establishes, a new threat and leaves you with a lot of questions as to how this comes together.
So you're not pulling inspiration from the old ISIS Shazam Power Hour?
Oh my.
Well, I think that there's stuff that's baked in the character already, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's a little bit of anytime you have the mythological inspired characters, like even in comics, there's a lot of Thors. I mean, Liefeld
Yeah.
had his own Thor and everything. There's always a lot of versions. There's a few Hercules. DC and Marvel have had their Hercules. So I think there's basics that are similar among that. But I like the idea of playing with Isis as someone who's been in the 21st century for a little bit, so she's not totally naive. She's got a job. She, but so it's a little more super heroics than just straight god goddess stuff. And I thought that was just one of the things that would be kind of appealing to me. So yeah, and like I said, with just to go back on a little bit of a detour, something you asked about with Spark Shooter was that period of time was so weird for everybody. Just the pandemic period of time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. And I was switching artists, and I knew that I had an artist that was only going to be able to do like one chapter, and then after that, it was just not able to put together the continuity of going right into another person. And so I said, well, I'm just going to pause this until we come back and finish it, because there's only 2 chapters left of the original story. And over time, Paolo was going to come on and draw it, but he got so busy with the demands of doing things from stuff in Brazil, commercial work, tidal wave as well, that it was fine to put on the back burner until I could come back and finish it, which that'll I fully believe we'll get those last 2 chapters out. But the person it hurts more than anybody that it's not finished is me.
Well, that is true.
That's not depending on maybe Justin Peniston loves it. Maybe it hurts him that he hasn't read the last 2 chapters. But
it's funny too, like, because I'm that you're bringing it up, because I'm at that time, actually more kind of like when cons were starting to come back. I was asking like everyone, like, well, how did the pandemic affect you? Did it affect your work? Was it hard to like find work and whatnot? And obviously, it affected the Spark Shooter fairly significantly.
Yeah, I don't want to lay it all on that, but it was obviously it was the time, and Inkaru, who drew wonderfully chapters 3 through 13. We talk and everything, but she got so much work in Spain related to animation and children's programming and so forth that it was just, she didn't have the time for it. And I think that if she had the time where she could do 1 day a week and draw, because that's how we used to release it, was 1 page a week, on the website.
Right.
And I think she would do it, but she doesn't have the time. And with animation and the online work and her own work and everything, there was a period of time when she had the time to do it, obviously for that run of 3 through 13, but then it was just a thing that she wouldn't be able to come back, and because I had 2 artists in the interim there. So it'll be, like I said, I'll be delighted when it eventually wraps up, and the thing will eventually see print. But it is just, I hate to say, not a priority, but not the number 1 priority at the moment.
I feel like you're pulling a Kevin Smith and Spider-Man Black Cat. If you remember, I think it was a 4-part miniseries, and it took years before he finished it. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, it's done. Writing wise. Wasn't the rumor that Smith wrote the first issue of like Daredevil the Target, and then he hadn't even written the other issues?
I think so, yeah.
And now the last 2 parts have been done forever, and they're not they're not getting changed. I'm not sitting there tinkering with them or whatever. I know what the last 2 chapters are. They're written. They're done.
Okay.
They're 100% in the can. I know the ending. I knew what the ending was of the original volume, the original 1 through 18 volume. I knew what the ending was for a long time. So that was not something that I was nervous about not ever writing it. I've joked about like getting it back on track and then dropping dead before the last page comes out. Last page next week.
Don't make jokes like that.
Nah. But it is one of those things where it's you work on something for a really long time. You just at the end of the day, you just want people to see it, but you also kind of want it done.
But that is kind of my question too, right? Like once they're out and they're done, it's like it's done. Do you feel like, are you kind of afraid to finish it off in that way?
Oh no,
Okay.
I'm not. Speaking of long-term stuff, I've got a novel I've been working on for freaking ever, but it's one of those things that nobody's expecting it, so it just ebbs and flows. But it's you have, and this is JD can chime in too, but I think that there's a certain period that with writers, and I think most of the time you might say it's your 20s or whatever, where it's like you have maybe almost like this boundless energy, and if you're single and what you do is you work and you come home and you write and everything, then that's the thing. But then you have different jobs, and I've got, on one level it's great, I have a job where I write.
Yeah.
On another level, I've got a job where I write.
Yeah.
The last thing you want to do with your free time is to write. Yeah.
It's a little bit of a harder, pushing that boulder, right? It's a little bit harder sometimes to get into the pocket. And I'm not, outside of the comic stuff, I'm not really, I'm chipping away at it. Like that's another thing that I've planned out without over planning, so I know the end is in sight for it, but at that point I'll just be glad when it's done.
Right.
And that's kind of a negative feeling. It's not like you're excited it'll be done. It'll just be like, oh my god, that's done. It's like cleaning out a garage.
Yep. But I mean, I can totally relate too. I mean, I'm sure John can back me up on this. As software developers, if you come home, the last thing you want to do is work on your computer or fix a software problem. It's like,
well, I mean,
you don't have a life, but
when I find something interesting, but like you tire, literally, if you're coding all day, you tire your brain out on it, and when you get home, most days I just want to veg. Like most people come home and they've got all this energy because they've been sitting all day and they want to do something physical. I come home and I just want to relax and look at some anime because it's just it's the same for everybody, right? I mean,
the old joke is mechanics always drive like the most beat up cars. Yeah. So.
But that's to show off their skills. Like I can make this work and keep it running.
No, my brother-in-law's a mechanic, and like the last thing he wants to do is work on his own car at the end of the day. So.
Well, yeah, I think it's too that it's just you also the age thing. you tire more quickly. You're there was a period when I started the original Shotgun Reviews site, and I was just out of grad school. I was working for a technical catalog company where we had a third shift. So we worked I was working 3 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. And, so I'm 23, I'm in Indianapolis. Had a bunch of friends on the job, and it was one of those things. It's like, okay, it's 11:30. We just got off. What do we do? Oh yeah, there's bars. And then you could stay, like bars close at 3, and you could do it. And then, like, even if you got to bed at 3:30, even if you slept till noon, you're still up 3.5 hours where you have to go to work. My apartment building was next door to the complex where I worked. So I didn't even have like a commute. I drove from one parking lot to the next parking lot.
Right.
And so, you could get up and be like, oh, hell, man, I got like 2 hours. I can write. And so, like, the whole ball of that was a very different kind of thing versus when you're teaching, when you're working in a magazine. It's like all the subtle shifts that go through impact what your writing routine is. So whereas in one phase you might have these hours a day that you're able to do that kind of stuff, in another phase, with the nights that I didn't do anything social, when I would come home at like 11:30 at night, if I was by myself, or if it wasn't my girlfriend, now my wife, like, oh shit, well, I'll just write for 3 hours and then I'll go.
Right.
And I'm still getting like 8 hours of sleep. That kind of thing doesn't happen, as you get older and you have other demands, responsibilities, or hell, even more freelance work. You can't focus on the stuff that's entirely your own, out of responsibility.
Yeah, I hear you. Women ruin everything.
I did not say that.
No, you didn't.
It's kids. It's kids that ruin.
Oh, well, that's true too. Oh,
the cat. Yeah, I see Dave's cat walking through the shop. Mine's just been going around the chair like a shark.
Yes. For some reason, she wants a lot of attention tonight. So I'm surprised we haven't seen John's cat yet.
She was here a little bit. I think she's over there now. So
usually she's causing trouble. No dog for me tonight.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I think he's hanging out with the kid at bedtime.
So, go ahead. You were gonna say something, JD?
No, I just said he's hanging out with the kid.
Oh, okay. All right. So you said they're working. I don't know if we said this on air or if we said this before. They're working on the art now, right? So the script is done for the book.
Oh yeah, for Legend Isis #1. The art's in progress. There's an expectation it'll be done by the end of the month for the first issue. So I'm certain like the solicitation will be happening soon, or at least the announcement as to when you'd be able to order that. It's going to be a 4-issue mini. So it's all plotted. I'm working on the scripts right now, but one is almost done with the art. So
do you do full script, or you just like do an outline and let them fill it in with the art?
I've always been a full script person, and it's less about mania and more about I focus on dialogue a lot. Reviewers at some sites may disagree with that, but I really do. I really put a lot of thought into that. For me, like the whole rhythm of it has to come with the conversation.
I think most writers are full script these days, wouldn't you say?
I would agree with that. I think, and for all the Marvel method that we've always heard about, like most of the Marvel writers I know are full script writers. The people I know, like my David Pepos, that you guys know, is a good friend of mine.
Yep.
And David's a full script writer. All of his stuff, there's various the things that he's kickstarted even, and his Savage Avengers and all that was all full script. So I don't think I'm revealing anything. Look behind the curtain and behold a full script. But I think that there's just with the facility for, like I said, not control in the devious sense, but you're trying to control the idea of what you're trying to present, and sometimes there's happy accidents, but how many happy accidents are the Silver Surfer, right?
Right.
But most of the stuff is just and a lot of times you're not even sure when you're writing it, who you're necessarily going to have on art.
True.
So unless it's 100% collaborative thing, like Paolo and I have done some stuff together, and I might be looser in it with that. I would probably still do like the full dialogue, but I wouldn't necessarily, depending on who I'm working with, I might not fully dictate like an action sequence or whatnot. I might say, so and so have a sword fight for 2 pages, and here's what they're saying, and then Paolo might do some really cool shit. And I would trust him. It is that kind of trust factor. You know, when I was working with you know, different people like on Blood Queen and whatnot, I had a really good feeling that when I put something down, that's what I was going to see, or I was going to see an even better version of what was in my head. With Fritz Cassis doing Blood Queen, there were some things that I wrote, and I thought, is that clear? Is he, you know, does he get that what I'm going for? And I would see the pixels come back and like, oh God, yes, he did. He really understood, and you know, he made everything look better than what was in my head. And so, you know, it's, you can develop that level of trust where you write a little bit less, but you just don't know necessarily who you're going to end up with a lot of the time. That I have to say about Spark Shooter with Inkaru, her understanding of how to deliver humor that I wrote was uncanny. And there were times when I would write dialogue that I didn't even get too detailed into what the characters would be reacting with, because I knew she'd just draw it the way that, you know, the intent, what she would draw the intent.
Yeah,
it's harder, I think, when you're in a larger structure and your artists may change from issue to issue. That I think a lot of the guys and ladies have relied more on, you know, we need to have this planned out as far as possible, just to make sure that the story gets told the right way, because we're not sure who we're going to be working with from time to time.
Yeah, I know, and we've talked about this on the show multiple times about there has to be a trust between the writer and artist, and JD doesn't trust anyone. That's why he doesn't do comics anymore. So
I don't trust my pocketbook more than anything. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, it's, you know, and honestly, not to like steer into depressing territory, but you know, JD makes me think. Comics is really hard, and it's a really hard. I think that we're in a period now where a lot of people just don't know where stuff's going.
Yeah.
And I just, there are a lot of indies that we're seeing as pretty solid who are suddenly in very big trouble. You know, like IDW has had major shocks lately. You know, all this stuff with like Lion Forge Oni over the past couple of years. There have been, you know, Action Labs creator lawsuits and all that. There's a lot of upheaval in the firmament of especially the big indies. I know that's that's kind of a, you know, Dynamite's pretty steady state. I think Zenescope's doing okay, but you know, there are a lot of things going on the fringes, and it comes back to a lot of the old concerns. You know, where do the new readers come from? Are they finding the shops? Do they, you know, are the younger kids interested mainly in manga? And if they are, do they go to the comic shops, or do they just go to Barnes and Noble, or do they just order it from Amazon? Like, where do they, you know, that all has an impact. And I think it makes it very hard for the stores to figure out what to do. I think it makes it hard for the companies to figure out what kind of books to put out. Because, and I think that, you know, relying on people who were once stars don't necessarily help you either, because you never know what's going to click. And quite frankly, it's also very hard when the big two, most of the time, will switch a creative team and launch it with a new number one within a year or two. And that's, you know, maybe the creative team has only decided that they want to do a year, 18 months. Well, you don't have a handoff or changing the guard. It's just like, oh, we got to do a new number one again. And I think that makes it difficult too, even if you're going to follow in trade, which is valid. It makes it hard for you to decide where to pick it up. You know, what my first issue of X-Men as a kid was 125. I got it because I liked the cover. I became an X-Men fan in very short order over the big. What a great time to start, because you get the Muir Island saga and the Dark Phoenix saga, and like, holy shit. What a run to join with. But that was 125. I didn't read the first 124. I jumped on, and how many people were at the beginning? So it's weird. You gotta there's got to be a way that people can get in, and there's got to be a way to perpetuate, or else, yeah.
Yeah, I also kind of feel like Marvel, especially, has been doing things that alienating longtime fans, and I'm not even talking like us old people. I'm talking about even people that have been fans in the last 15 years or so, or 20 years or so. Like, obviously, Spider-Man's a mess right now, with the whole Mary Jane's like a sister stuff.
They killed Miss Marvel this week in the Spider-Man book.
I
Right.
posted that in our
Which, yeah, they killed Miss Marvel, but now
why?
that hold on. The theory behind that is, if anyone's reading X-Men right now,
Yeah, Krakoa should be resurrecting Krakoa as a mutant.
Yep, they're going to resurrect her as a mutant, so she's more aligned with the MCU version. And then Avengers #1 just came out, and Kristen put a nice review on the website, and he tore it apart. He's like, it's terrible. And
That's a death for nothing, though, for Miss Marvel. Like, just for literally nothing.
It's a shock. I mean, like, it's a thing. You can get people talking and try to get people in the shops because, like Troy's saying, it's so hard to market to the people, and you wind up marketing to the same people. And unfortunately, we talked about with the Guardians movie, right? It's so hard to make a meaningful story that doesn't involve death. And everybody was convinced somebody was going to die, and nobody died, right? Yeah. Because that's what fans are to when something has to resonate, we have to kill somebody. And I don't blame the writers. It's a marketing thing. We let marketing people dictate. That's why I get frustrated with corporate comics, and I kind of want nothing to do with it because, like you say, like, we get new creative teams and then they kind of lease the characters a little bit and they get to do something and they come on and then someone else does something. It's just like a cycle that gets boring after a while, quite frankly. And they're far more interested in people telling their own stories and creators with their own voices and comics coming out through Kickstarter. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I go to the shop every few months and I try to get myself excited about reading monthly comics again. And I come home and I'm like, every time. It never ceases to not frustrate me. And I don't blame the creative teams. I just, we're corporate now. Like, everything serves the bottom line, and it just doesn't work for me.
Right, which goes back to like the 80s of like all the cartoons that they put on were all for marketing, and so some of the storylines made no sense whatsoever. It was just introduce character after new character after new character after new design after new design. And James Gunn just showed us how to make a great story without killing somebody.
But the difference with that is, like, when you're talking about our 80s marketing of children's stuff, is you're marketing to a group of kids that is only going to be this age for a little while, and then they're going to move on to something else. Comics is marketing the same group of people for 30 years, essentially.
And that's the extra bigger hurdle.
To address Kassan's comment,
and we've talked about this before, too.
Well, we talked about this before on the show, that following the manga model, giving us longer stories, but like that's the whole like long story arc thing, and doing collected graphic novels. Like DC started doing that. Like, okay, we're gonna run a story for 6 issues. Now we're gonna collect it and sell you the graphic novel now for $20 as opposed to, well, I don't, what is it?
Well,
$6 a book now?
Yeah, but also manga isn't always like colored. It's all pencil sketch.
Right. But so, I mean, I get what he's saying, but like that's the whole thing is if they give us long, they're doing that in a way, and I also kind of feel like they're not doing it right. But like, our people, and we've talked about this too, the prestige format might be the better way to go. Just give us a nice long story, and then totally reboot. Like, don't worry about continuity. Like, totally reboot the character a few months later.
Because to JD's point, like the way the storylines go these days, written by, the corporate people, it wouldn't work even if they switched to manga format. So
I don't know. I mean, like, I think there's something to what he's suggesting, because clearly the manga format works, and it's a cultural thing. It's just different. Like reading serialized art is more socially acceptable there. Like people will go see a Marvel movie, but getting them to read a comic is difficult. Right. And it's not like it's not like manga isn't hard to read as far as like accessibility. Right. Like you try to like pick up a random manga and it's like there's stuff steeped in continuity. So it's like there's just as much of a barrier of entry. It seems that people are more willing, younger people, I should say, are more willing on a manga front. And I don't have any answers. I don't know. I think that if you went the manga route, you'd piss off a lot of people that work in comics because you're talking about taking jobs away from colorists. And like, maybe it's a good idea financially, but I don't know if it's a good way to keep the people in the business happy.
Also, there's a difference. A manga is written by an author who has rights to his stuff and controls the whole storyline. The stuff coming out of Marvel and DC, there's no way you'd get a cohesive.
But that's the whole thing. We're way past that model in the big two. Like their corporate. What's the word you're always using, JD?
IP farms.
IP. Yeah, they're IP farms. That's it. It's not, and there's no room for someone to come up with a new character for the big two and just.
There is no. Well, own it. No, own it will never happen because look what happened with McFarlane 30 years ago with Spawn. It just wound up with nothing but litigation. So, I don't know, man. I have no answers. There's cool stuff on Kickstarter.
Well, for myself, I've in the past year or so gotten a lot of Marvel's Epic collections. They partially like some of these are things that I have in the single issue format, but they're old enough that I'm kind of afraid to revisit them too much, but also wanted to have some of the stuff available in case the boys wanted to read it and whatnot. But I'm struck by. And we know this intrinsically as longtime fans, but the length of the runs that some of the writers had, and some of the writing and art teams had. Obviously, Claremont had a 15-year run on Uncanny, which is insane. That'll never happen again for somebody that doesn't own the characters. Miller, on his stints on Daredevil, were lengthy, but incredible. Electra Saga, Born Again. Byrne on Fantastic Four. That's the Visionaries collection of trades that Marvel did. It constituted 9 total trades. The Zero issue, which is issues that Byrne did before he became the writer-artist, and the 8 volumes of all of his stuff across Secret Wars and She-Hulk being a member and all that. There was a point when someone was the writer, and they kind of got to ride with it. As long as the book was doing well, if they're the writer and artist team, Simonson on Thor, all these things were happening at the same time. So for whatever the knocks that people might have had on Jim Shooter as editor-in-chief or whatever, he sure as hell let the talent run wild for many years. and I think that one of the reasons that those books are so esteemed is that the shakeups happened when the writer-artists got bored. If you look at all the iterations of the team that Claremont took X-Men through, nobody was telling him to do that. When they went through the Siege Perilous and had the Outback team and everything, nobody was telling him to do that stuff.
Right.
He was just doing it. And it's the only thing that really got forced on them was making the 5th member of X Factor Jean instead of Dazzler. And that was that was
probably a good call.
Yeah, that was something they had to contend with. But and when Miller was done telling certain Daredevil stories, he'd dip. And then later he's like, "I've got another Daredevil story." They're like, "By all means," he would do a story, and then he'd be out again. It was a really different. It's the sensibility of it is so completely different, and I think that the Image time broke it. When the Image thing happened, you never saw that again. The runs became much shorter, and the people that that was even Wolfman kind of even stopped doing Titans by the mid 90s. After the Titans hunt and all that, you never saw.
I mean, I think you're also making an excellent point. The fact, I grew up in the Ron Friends, Tom DeFalco era of Spider-Man. To to me, that's my Spider-Man, right? Like that will always be how I view the character, and then and that's part of the problem with these characters that have been around for so long. Then you pick up a book today and it's just like, you go, this is garbage because this isn't my Spider-Man,
But who's the audience, right? I think
the question. Yeah.
That's the problem. I think too is we have a hard time defining, because we have these definitive runs, like you say, like a Simonson on a Thor. Thor today is nothing like Walt Simonson, what he did. Not mean nothing like, but I mean it's different than what Walt Simonson was doing 35, 40 years ago. Should it be the same? Like, should Walt Simonson be the end all be all on Thor? Should Jason Aaron's Thor not have the same weight? And like, these are like legit questions. Like, you have to let your creators create, but at the same time, you have old fans like, this isn't what I want, which is, again, that's a problem. So who is the audience? Who are these books being written for? And that number gets smaller and smaller every year.
Yeah, and I got to say, I like Jason Aaron's Thor.
Me too. Me too.
There's a whole lot of good stuff that's been done in recent years that I've really enjoyed. The Hickman's House of X Powers of 10/X minis. Thought those were great. I thought that was the kind of hard reset that the X-Men needed at the time. There's just a lot of material, but there's other things I haven't liked as much. And and like JD says, maybe some of that's me. Maybe I would have a different lens on it. Were I younger, older, or whatever, but I know the stuff that, not to throw stones or whatever, but the stuff at DC I haven't liked, my kids haven't liked either. So I feel like maybe that's not age. maybe, I'm not saying that makes it objectively bad, but it's like, I know that if they don't like it either, then it's not just me. It's not just.
I spent a weekend reading. That's the last thing I grabbed was Dark Crisis. I'm gonna read this whole series one night. I grabbed every issue. Was not cheap. Grabbed all 7 issues, sat down, read it, came out, and like, what did I just read? Like nothing. Yep. And again, Josh Williams is a good writer, but I mean, nothing. It feels like you paint by numbers. It feels like they're being told this and then this and then this, and it just doesn't feel like a cohesive story in any way. And it's fine, but I can't say I like it. I read it like a month and a half ago, and I cannot go 2 months ago. I cannot go beat for beat and tell you what happened in the story like I could do with Kraven's Last Hunt. Is that my age, or is that just, have I grown out of the hobby? Like, I don't know. I don't know what to think about any of this stuff.
Yeah, it didn't engage you in the way for whatever reason, and it's, to use a good DC, I really enjoyed the first Metal mini when they did when Snyder did the first Metal, and there was a lot of hilarious and or creative stuff going on in that. The egg that was Plastic Man, the use of Baby Darkseid as a weapon, all the Bat family all being dressed as Batman in the Justice League, not knowing who they were chasing because all the Robins were in the field, and there's a lot of fun stuff in that. And there were things that was like, oh, why did nobody ever do that before? Because some of the stuff was simple ideas that they were just like small twists on the things, and I enjoyed a lot of that. But it gets to a point where they go to the well too many times. Like Batman Who Laughs was a great, like, oh, this is a cool idea for that mini, but to then play it out over and over and over again becomes, it's not like, because there used to be, I don't remember what it was, but I remember reading in the 70s and 80s there was a rule on how few times they allowed Joker to appear in a calendar year because they didn't want to overdo it, and that is not now.
No. It's like Venom in the 90s. Remember when Venom came out the first time? It was kind of cool. This new dark, evil Spider-Man. How cool. And then you keep putting them in, and then we got to keep putting them in. And then we got to have Carnage. Now we have 90 Carnages, and now Venom's got his own series, and nobody. I mean, like, it just, every time there's a good idea, they can't not bleed every last drop out of it because they think that's what the market wants. It really isn't.
I think a good example of that is with the Batman Who Laughs, right? Like a friend of mine, I've talked about many times, Greg Horn, did an alternate cover where he did a Harley Quinn in the same style as the Batman Who Laughs, and it like did really well. Like the cover sold really well, and a lot of people liked it. So like, but the character does not exist in the book anywhere. Like he just came up with this because he knew people liked Harley Quinn, and he just wanted a piece of art to sell. So they came to him and they made it a statue that's just, you know, so they knew they were going to make money off of it. But it's like, it's oversaturation, and it gets silly because it's like, he just drew this and now all of a sudden it becomes, you know, like this big thing.
I don't think that's a problem though. I mean, like, especially if they're not shoehorning it and making it become a thing, like, because it gives Greg a chance to make a couple extra bucks. And if people want a statue, you know, who cares about a statue? It's like when you see something like this and you go, no, this has to be the thing of the comic, and then it derails the comic, because that happens a lot when you let the corporation, well, again, let the corporations, I mean, they're gonna drive these things, they're trying to make money, but I mean, like, oftentimes what's making money doesn't often make the best arts. Kassan says corporations are too afraid to have a complete story arc. They want to milk the cow even after they've roasted the cow. This is true.
Yeah,
Nothing like milking a hamburger. It's weird at that point.
And as we said many times, that like comic books are the middle act and they don't end.
That's Act 2. You're constantly in a state of Act 2.
Yeah.
I was talking to David about this the other day. Name drop. My friend David Pepos, writer of upcoming Moon Knight mini. This idea that there's some things that are kind of steady state, like, you know, after their fallow period in the early 70s before Giant Size X-Men 1, X-Men have been consistently popular in the comic shop since the, you know, mid 70s, right? But there's some things that were really big that they've never properly relaunched again. And like one of the things that was really interesting is, like, when I was a kid, one of the biggest characters at Marvel is the Thing, and the Thing has receded in consciousness for whatever reason. I mean, he was the top character in Marvel 2-in-1 for a book that ran 100 issues. He had a solo book coming out of Secret Wars, you know, the original one, and so forth. Like, the Thing was huge. The Thing was in all their advertising. Hell, they made a great cartoon where the Thing was a kid that hit two rings together to become the Thing. You know,
Thing, do your thing.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then similarly, the Defenders, you know, that lineup of Hulk, Dr. Strange, really appealed to people for a long time. And then the characters that orbited the group, you know, Hellcat, Nighthawk, etc. It was a very popular book that ran 152 issues. You cannot launch the Defenders anymore.
Nope.
And it's changed so many times. And the Thing's had a couple of like minis, and they even did a soft Marvel 2-in-1 like year-long run a few years ago. But it makes me wonder. I don't have the answer to that, but like what makes something run alongside Avengers, X-Men, whatnot, and be popular for 10 years, and then you can't launch it again?
The Defenders is one of my favorite books. Yeah, and it's no one wants to read it anymore.
Well, even the Fantastic Four in the 60s, that was the Stan and Jack book. That was the heartbeat of the Marvel Universe. And then it kind of lost its prestige, and it's never, I mean, under Byrne, it still was good, but it wasn't that driver that X-Men was, right? And it's never quite hit that level again. I mean, you could, and again, you guys know my love of Superman, but you could, at one point, Superman was like the most important character in popular fiction.
Yeah.
And now he's there, he's Superman, he's important, but he's not what he was in the 1940s, you know?
True.
Yeah. I know that there's rumors that the Justice League is coming back, but I find it interesting that DC allowed there to not be a Justice League for a while. I think that's kind of interesting that, you know, that I don't know if that's a reaction to the film or anything like that. Like, hey, let's let this cool off for a couple minutes.
I think you might be right.
You know, but
all right.
The movie didn't damage anything that was fundamental about the comics. I mean, you had years of Super Friends, Justice League, and people still love Justice League Unlimited.
Great show.
Animated. People still love it. You know, it didn't damage any of that.
One person in charge with an overarching, you know, a couple of overarching storylines. So.
Yeah.
But that's the thing too, and I'll argue this with kind of like as fans, we love continuity, but I think that it becomes limiting at some point. Like again, Justice League Unlimited got to be its own thing. It didn't have to serve 1,000 masters at once, and it was over It was over.
And it had to end, right.
And it had to end. And Bruce Timm could always use it, lay back in it when he wanted it. But I mean, it was really just this pocket of the DC universe. This is why I think some of the best DC stuff tends to be their out of continuity books, right? Because then you just have to worry about the archetypes, and the archetypes are awesome, right? Like Kingdom Come, probably my favorite comic book of all time. Love that story. Out of continuity.
All-Star Superman.
All-Star Superman, another great example.
That's
out of continuity.
That's one of my favorites. Yeah.
Yeah, because you can read it and it's done, and you get a complete story, and that's it. And that's something you don't get in periodical reading, right? Periodical comics don't do that. It's always got to get you buying the next issue.
I think one of the interesting things about the MCU as a spinoff of that is that it proves that there's nothing wrong with the characters themselves.
Right.
they are eminently adaptable, flexible. You can make them into a lot of different things, and they will work for a lot of people. But going back to JD's point, they've made it so that the next movie is the next issue that you're waiting for. I mean, it mirrors the reader experience in that way. And it's funny because a lot of people have never realized that they got the monthly comic shop experience just refracted through a prism of 23 movies going up to Endgame. And I think that less of, not that some of the subsequent films haven't had their problems, but I think that a little bit of what fell off for people was the connective tissue was not immediate. That you had the connective tissue driving one movie to the next movie, going to Infinity War and Endgame, and it wasn't immediately established what the next thing was, and I think it made it drift for a lot of viewers. I think.
I also kind of feel like one of the things with Endgame was it feels like a finale. It feels like this is the big end of the story for 23 movies, and it's over now. So like people are like, okay, well that story's over. I'm not really interested in these minor characters.
That's not true because the box offices are still really good. People are still interested, but there is some. I've been saying it for a couple of years on the show. There's something missing, right? And I think it's you lose the characters, right? Like the big characters that drove us. This, we're trying to place Iron Man, Captain America. It has not happened yet, right? I know they had their eyes on having that with a lot of different characters, and it just hasn't happened. Even like the stuff I've done. And we should have had another Guardians movie way earlier than what we got it. But we didn't. So you lose that whole connection to the Marvel, the MCU too. And it just isn't quite, for me specifically, I've said this many times, but I'm saying it just isn't there for me right now. I mean, I'm hoping that the next one's really good. But like, since like Spider-Man, and again, that was a nostalgia trip. So it just hasn't been there for me.
I also kind of feel like when you do the transforming Sam into Captain America in a TV show that not everyone's going to watch, I kind of feel like that hurts it a little bit as well.
You lose some of the prestige.
I know, but I wanted to like.
You do though.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I feel
I'm agreeing with you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
I thought you said you do it for the prestige. But
no, you lose the prestige. You lose the
prestige.
prestige because again, like I know Marvel and Disney want these series to work. I find most of them to be a chore, quite honestly, to get through. And it's just Captain America and the Winter Soldier was all right, but it wasn't as good as Civil War or Winter Soldier.
Yeah,
the story was there. It just I just don't think it worked the way they wanted it to. And I think.
It didn't end well.
And the last episode where Sam is like preaching to everyone just felt weird.
I don't even remember that at this point.
Yeah,
that kind of felt like interference from the CEOs or something. Like that didn't seem to fit the rest of the story.
But you want that reveal of him in that costume to be on the big screen, like, and we didn't get it. Yeah.
They could have pulled a Smallville ending and then had him come out in the next movie, right? And then come out, but then had him come out in the next movie,
The next movie hasn't happened yet.
Yeah, there's the problem.
I think the problem here is we're not going to solve the comic book industry's issues.
Nope.
So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about more comics in a minute. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back because I found this video and I want to play it. It reminds me. I used to watch these all the time.
Hi, I'm a Marvel. And I'm a DC.
Hey, by the way, welcome back to the movies, man.
Hey, it's good to be back. It's been a while, but we've got plenty of projects lined up.
Oh, really? Like Wonder Woman?
You may see that one eventually.
Oh, Flash?
Hey, you never know. Sometime possibly soon in the next few years. Keep your ears open. And we just asked a few writers to think about the possibility of maybe what it might take to theoretically make a Justice League movie in the next 10 years or possibly more, perhaps.
Yeah.
What are you guys thinking of doing?
Well, actually, we are working on new Iron Man and Hulk and Ant-Man movies.
Ant-Man.
Yeah, and then once we finish the Captain America and Thor movies, we'll follow up with an Avengers movie.
Oh.
Not to mention negotiating for 3 more of my movies and Wolverine and Magneto spin-offs from X-Men.
You know, I might actually fight a supervillain in my next movie.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's gonna be awesome.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm sure, yeah. Oh, hey, I heard they just cast Two-Face in the next Batman movie. Oh, that is sweet, man. Oh, I'm sorry, did I say something wrong? Or?
No.
Lots changed.
A lot has changed.
Oh, wow. Troy just emerged from the Saturday Evening Post. That was pretty cool. That was very Superman-esque, actually.
Yeah, nobody wants to see a sneezing fit on camera, guys.
No, a lot has changed since, because DC did all those movies, right?
Yes, yeah.
And, the Magneto spinoff never happened. That wound up becoming Days of Future Past, which was a good movie. I liked that movie, actually, quite a bit. Yeah, a lot changed since then.
Yeah.
And then Superman did nothing but fight a supervillain in his last movie, in the movie that followed that up, and it was terrible. Be careful what you wish for. You just might get it. Because then, Superman didn't fight a supervillain. Your movie was boring. Fine. A million people died. Are you happy now?
All right. So I wanted to have a little bit of fun conversation. This actually, again, was Kassan brought it to our attention. But it was something that Gail Simone posed over on Twitter. And I think since, we've got a writer on the show, it's a good opportunity. She said, you get to write one DC Marvel crossover with a top artist drawing of your single favorite character from each company. Who is your pick? So, Troy, since you're the guest, you can go first.
Man, I'm going to tell you right now, it wouldn't work. You get my historical favorite Marvel character is Cyclops.
Okay.
And my historical favorite DC character would be the original longtime version of the Wally West Flash.
Oh, okay.
As in, the whole from the transition he made from sidekick to the Flash at Crisis on Infinite Earths, that subsequent series with everybody up to Wade taking over and taking it through terminal velocity and everything. That made Wally kind of my favorite DC character, is a sidekick that realized the promise of becoming the hero.
Right.
And I have no idea how the hell you'd make that work with Cyclops, but And I, for me, the reason that I've always liked Cyclops so much is, like I said, I discovered X-Men at a very young age, and he was very emblematic of what the X-Men were. He couldn't control his power, but he was the most disciplined one. He was the guy that, in some ways, could never have a normal life. Even Nightcrawler, for a time, had that image inducer that he wore. It's like, hey, I'm not blue and furry. I can walk around in public. Nobody knows. And it's like, yeah, well, I can't take my glasses off. You'll all die. So it's he had this thing that he made himself the peak of, strategy, etc., all the different things that he did, because he knew he was never going to be normal. And I think that that's one of the things that kind of appealed to me about him so much.
Right.
But I wouldn't know how to make those work together. That said, I absolutely love the Legion of Superheroes. So I could probably find anybody from Marvel and make the Legion of Superheroes work.
I was gonna say, so then challenge your writer brain, and what two characters do you think would work together?
I don't know. It's there's a whole lot of teen characters I think that could work really well, just because they have the similar circumstances. I mean, Cyclops and Batman would be an interesting thing because they're all about the discipline and the holding people at arm's length emotionally and all that.
Yes.
It'd be interesting to see what that's like. And, Batman would probably judge him for everything that went down with Madeline Pryor. He's like, it's not my fault. It was editorial. But, that they're one of the things I mentioned the House of X series. There's the great scene in that where they're trying to destroy the Mother Mold satellite, and Charles and Magneto were talking about the risk that it's almost assured to be failure, and Cyclops is like, does it need to be destroyed? They said yes. He's like, then it will be. And I'm like, that's everything you need to know about that character
right
there. He's like, he's not going to let these guys down. He's he's going to do whatever has to be done because that's what he does. And I just really related to that. Just like, wow, that's especially I think that one of the things that's attractive to the characters that you form on, like, I always love Batman. I love Batman when I was a little kid. There's certain things that appeal to you about Batman. I'm never gonna hate Batman, but I think that some things you ebb and flow with what you are most connected to. So I've always, I don't know why. It's funny because there's a lot of people in my age group or younger. Spider-Man is their all-time favorite. I love Spider-Man, but I was never the biggest follower of Spider-Man. Watched him in cartoons, watched him on TV, watched him in movies, but I was never the biggest follower in the comic for whatever reason. I don't know. It's maybe because even when I started, he had 4 books.
Well, yeah, that's true. I think he had. Well,
he had 3. I'm pretty sure it was Amazing, Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man, and then he had Web.
And Web of, Web of launched right around when I started reading too. Yeah.
My first and Team Up. My first individual issue of Spider-Man was Spectacular Spider-Man, Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man, that introduced Razorback.
Yes.
The truck driving Arkansas. That was my favorite Spider-Man comic.
That was a fun time for villains.
Yeah.
All right.
So let's. I think I could do anybody with the Legion. What's also funny is there's a period of time because Matt Brady and I had done the Batman 80-page giant and other stuff. There's a lot of pitches we made for different ideas at DC, and some of them were crazy. Some of them were team up ideas or team ideas, but it's funny because there are a couple of characters that we talked about using that the people have actually done stuff with that reinvigorated them. The funniest one is Kite Man.
Hell yeah!
Wow.
The boost that Kite Man got, hell yeah, got from the Batman run and the Harley Quinn cartoon, and people know who Kite Man is now. They're I can't believe it.
Tom King did great work bringing him to the consciousness.
Yeah. All right, then, JD, how about you?
All crossovers suck. That's the truth. There's not a lot of them. They do. They're not good. The only one I ever liked was the X-Men Titans one, right? Walt Simonson. That one was pretty good. The rest of them, I don't know, man. I never got into them. That being said, my favorite characters, of course, Spider-Man, Superman. I don't think that makes for a great. I mean, it's been done, right? So no interest. But if I were to do one, I would want to see Superman and Wolverine. I don't love Wolverine, but I think the dichotomy of the characters would make for an interesting story because these are two people that would not get along.
Yeah. All right. Okay, John, you've got a look on your face like you've got a good one up your sleeve. You're muted.
Constantine and Loki.
Constantoki.
because you never knew you'd never know which one was going to betray the other first, and Constantine has taken on gods before, so
it'd be a fun story.
Yeah, that could be fun.
It'd be like a buddy movie, except with serial killers.
I'm in. That could be fun.
That could be fun, yeah. So it's funny because I did think about this because obviously my two favorite are from either camp would be Batman and Spider-Man, but that's been also done. So I gave it some thought. I thought Rocket Raccoon and Lobo doing like a space.
Oh no, that would be just fun to watch.
Like bikers in space, kind of like road picture kind of a comic.
Well, it would be until Lobo decided that he wanted to put a muzzle on.
Well, exactly.
Rocket.
Like they're not going to get along just for
So
the nature. Of
you
the
could
two
do it like
characters.
you could do it like Midnight Run, like Lobo has a bounty on the Rocket Raccoon,
There you
and then
go.
like the two of them are coming back through space. That would actually, I just sold myself on that. That would be all right.
See, I knew it was a good idea. So cool. Wow, that went faster than I thought it was going to.
Could drag it out. No.
Actually, you know what? I was thinking of another question while we were talking, and I'm just kind of curious because we were talking about IP and people's hands being tied with characters and whatnot. So with the ISIS character, are you free to like tell whatever story you want? Did they give you any kind of like rules for how they want the character presented?
We haven't hit that, to be honest, because I mean I've read a bunch of the material, and so I had an idea of what the vibe was overall, and knew that not that Darren had rules or whatever. He had a feeling of some superhero-y kind of stuff, and so that was the vibe of the pitch. I wasn't like nothing will ever be the same. She's now a cyborg. It was it was more of here is an adventure that I think would fit the overall vibe. And we it wasn't long term. It was pitched as a mini. I mean, I think it's different. I don't think here's a good flip to your question. I don't think that it's a secret that when I did the Blood Queen book at Dynamite that it was contracted for and originally supposed to be long as opposed to 6 issues and then another.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, I think that we had really different ideas of what that was going to be.
Right. Okay.
But had given the chance, I would have been able to tell a much longer story that I had in there for, a long period of time. But it didn't. And even when I did the, Blood Queen versus Dracula mini, I referenced things that happened in between time that were things that would have happened in the book, just in case, ever did get to go back and do anything with it.
Right.
But I think that too, that can be a danger of, unless you've got an absolute ironclad guarantee, man, there's no way to plan out stuff anymore unless it's your own. And part of that problem too is that the first issue of that sold extremely well, but there was no real promotion or anything for it after the first issue because like there are a lot of companies that serially promote the first issue and not subsequent issues.
Yep.
I'm not blaming the whole thing on that, but when you make a big deal out of the first issue and you've got like a Midtown Comics exclusive cover and all this stuff that it had and black and white covers for signing, and you sell like 10,000 copies of a thing, and then the next one has a big dip. Well, it's like, well, was it me?
Right.
Promotion? Was it what else came out that month? There's that whole thing, but then it's, you're not telling people to stick around for the long haul. And I think that it was, there might have been a little bit of an expectation that it was more of a bad girl book than what I was actually writing. So I don't know if you guys have read it or have any memory of it at all. It's been a while, but it's just an expectation of versus reality of. I think that there were some people that wanted it to be, and this isn't a knock, like Zenescope stuff that I was also doing, when it was really more of a fantasy thing that was informed by Hammer Studios kind of stuff.
I'm pretty sure someone sent me a copy of the first one, and I'll be honest with you. I knew you were doing Zenescope stuff, so I kind of was expecting that a little bit too, and it was like, oh, okay,
like I said, I'm not trying to. I had a lot of fun writing a lot of the Zenescope books, but it's a very different kind of thing. There's more of a, it's more of a self-aware, vibe that what they got. And with the Elizabeth Bathory thing, my first experience with Elizabeth Bathory as an idea outside of like Ripley's Believe It or Not. The historical was the Hammer movies. And so I'm like, oh, what if we made something that was like a Hammer movie, but it was like a, political fantasy, a little bit of that, like court machinations and the witches versus the different characters. And, that was to me, what was interesting about it was it's like the court stuff, and eventually she would be this character, but they had this thing of they wanted to really rush it to making the character as she appeared issue to issue that cover image that J. Anacleto drew as opposed to what the story was. It's very weird. I don't know. I'm never going to understand it fully. I've driven myself a little nuts going, I don't know. I know that my editor on that book, Molly Mahan, was tremendous. And she ended up getting lots of other editorial work because she deserved it. And she was awesome.
Yeah, she's cool.
Yeah, but she was great. And, every time I said something crazy where I'm like, I want to name all the story arcs after Slayer songs, or Slayer albums, and she's like, great. She was very, very supportive.
Well, we lost Dave, so I guess Dave is gone.
Dave, are you there? Are you there, Dave?
I guess based on that, it's time to call it a little bit. Troy, thanks a lot for coming on. John, what did you learn? What do you recommend? What do you?
I was going to say, I think Dave's cat got a little too frisky.
It's possible. It's possible.
With a cord or something. Yeah. I didn't expect to like it really. I shotgunned an entire 2 seasons of an anime called The Devil is a Part-Timer. Sorry, JD. No, really expensive, weird. Yeah, I know. You usually the titles are way wackier than that. But oh well. So that's my recommendation today.
Mine is I just finished a book, Death of the Territories. It's a nonfiction book about the end of the territorial system in professional wrestling in the 1980s. What a fascinating read this was by Tim Hornbaker. Absolutely interesting book. If you're like me and you're a wrestling nerd and want to learn something, can't say enough good things about that. I learned absolutely. Actually, I did learn a lot, Troy. This was a good conversation. Usually I say I didn't learn nothing, but I did. This was a good talk. I can't go with my gimmick this week. So yeah, that's where I'm at. How about you, man? You're guesting with us this week. Is there anything you have to recommend or that you learned?
Oh, well, let's see. I'm going to go with, I learned that you guys feel the same way I do about a lot of the stuff that's been going on lately. I haven't talked in a while, so it's kind of like, oh, hey, that's cool. But, recommend, I'm going to just say I've mentioned a couple of people here. I'm going to recommend the stuff that my pal David's doing at Marvel for a lot of the stuff that, we talk about the problems and everything of existing within that kind of structure. And I think David has gotten to tell some interesting stories. He did the Hulk annual that came out this week, where he pitched it as a found footage horror movie starring the Hulk.
That's a cool idea.
Actually made it work.
Cool.
They actually made it work in the comic, which is amazing, because he was, he's like, I don't know if this will work, but and it works. It's just, I've never seen anybody really apply that. I've seen stuff that's kind of in the point of view of a news broadcast or whatever, or famously in Daredevil Born Again, you've got Ben Urich on the street describing the arrival of the Avengers while Hell's Kitchen is on fire and everything. But that's a little more poetic. It's not really, done where the lens is literally the lens, where you're looking through the camera at the stuff going on and like how regular people would experience the Hulk. I mean, it's a great idea.
Great.
And,
like a Cloverfield with the Hulk. We're cool.
Yeah.
Very. I'll check that out.
Very much.
Well,
and he's doing the Moon Knight City of the Dead comic coming up too, which looks to be a lot of fun. And I know he puts a lot of thought into how he applies some of this stuff. So I'm really curious to see how it turns out. So I don't mind boosting my buddy. And over at Tidal Wave, please do check out the Midnight Witch stuff from Paulo Yanami and sometimes me, because he's worked with other like Brazilian writers like Rodrigo Montero and so forth. And sometimes Rodrigo and I have worked together where I've written English scripts and he's done the Portuguese script to go with it. So, cool stuff over there that Paulo's doing. Midnight Witch. I look for it on Amazon.
Dave, we were doing likes and recommendations because we thought you were gone.
Well, I don't know. My cable modem's downstairs. All of a sudden, it disappeared from the list of networks, and I was lost. So I've got my mobile hotspot on my phone to finish up here.
Woo! So Dave, likes and recommendations.
Likes and recommendations this week.
Wow, I got nothing. I was going to say what I learned was the comic industry sucks. At this point,
it does now. For now.
I think I don't know. I think they're gonna have to make some changes. I don't know what eventually, but I do think eventually they're gonna have to be like, if it's going to manga style, if it's going prestige format, eventually it's gonna have to change. So, but all right. I also recommend that people head on over to superheroespeak.com where they can find the podcast every week. Links to all our social media at the top of the page. Of course, comic reviews by our good friend Kristen. I also will recommend that if you are watching this right now, and maybe, just maybe, you found us, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Click that bell for notifications so you won't miss us when we go live right here on this channel every Sunday night at 8:30 Eastern. So, yeah. All right. So I think on that note, hold on. My mouse went away. Okay. As always, thanks for listening. Don't let your cape get caught in the door. Have a good week.